like to welcome Amy White to the podcast today. She is a functional, holistic nutritionist who approaches women's health and wellness through body balance. Amy believes that food is information and most body imbalance is due to a simple communication issue. And so I'd love to welcome Amy. Thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure. Very excited.
Yeah, so my first question for you is, what is that communication issue?
It's actually really understanding that food is information and that it really does matter what you're eating, because everything that you put in your mouth and you swallow tells your body very specific things. So I like to explain it like, if you're, for me, for example, when I was 37 and kind of just didn't realize, like, I just didn't recognize myself. I was like, I don't know what happened here. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take care of this. And so I did the normal, I'm like, what are the rules? I looked at the food pyramid. I'm like, okay, these are the rules. I'm following all the rules, and nothing got better. And in fact, I think things got worse. I ended up going to nutrition school, not for me, but for my daughter, who was having gut problems that we weren't getting addressed. So we had to figure it out. So I ended up going to nutrition school. And in doing that, I learned this whole idea of communication. And it was so interesting because I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to not be achy. I wanted to have really good daytime energy. I wanted to stop being really moody and crazy and scaring little kids and dogs. And I wanted to sleep well, all these things. And then what I realized was the way that I was approaching this, I was actually telling my body, no, we actually do want to put on a bunch of weight, and we want to be really, really tired and kind of lazy so that we don't burn anything off. And we're going to, waking up between 2 and 4 in the morning, definitely add that one in there. And, aches and pains, we'll bring it, because yes, that's what I'm telling my body. Yes, inflammation, yes, bring it up. So that's what I was telling my body. But I thought, I was like, body, let's drop the weight. Let's start feeling good. Let's, sleep really well. And so it was just this huge communication issue. So I'm always like, think of your body or your brain as this little, very eager 3-year-old who is just trying to do the right thing, but takes everything very literally. Mm-hmm. And so by me eating certain foods, my brain was like, I hear you. I know just what you want us to do. Perfect. This is body. This is what we're going to do. Yay, win. And I'm like, that is wrong. That is not what I wanted. So understanding that's what I mean by the communication problem.
Okay. So all those issues that you were sharing just sounds so normal for a lot of people. Like, they just deal with it. Mm-hmm. So what is the first step to overcoming that? Like, for example, having energy. We all want the energy, but we're telling, I guess, through what foods we eat and things we do. Yeah. So how would we start to overcome that?
Well, so the first thing you have to understand is that there's definitely systemic inflammation going on in your body, which, we can't see it, but the way we're acting, moving, that's all related to that inflammation. And so the biggest thing that I found for a mature body, right? This is somebody who's now, you're grown up, basically. You don't have your college body anymore. Things have shifted and changed. Sugar is unfortunately incredibly inflammatory. And as we age, we do not metabolize sugar the way that we used to. So that is probably the one thing you have to really just get a handle on and understand, what is sugar? Where's it coming from? How much of it am I eating? Because everybody, you say sugar, everyone's like, ooh, candy bars, ice cream. And I'm like, no, I'm like thinking like bread, oatmeal, rice. So it's the hidden or the more subtle sugars. It's the foods that convert very quickly to sugar in our bodies. Those are the sugars that most people overlook, and they think they're eating really healthy. And I'm not saying those aren't healthy foods, but you have to know what's healthy for you at any given time in your life. So then there's that whole idea of a spectrum of health. Where are you currently on that spectrum of health? And I make it a really simple spectrum. We've got the good, we've got the blah, and then we've got the bad. And the blah is kind of what we just talked about. It's like you go to the doctor's like, hey, good to see you. You're great. See you in a year. And you're like, am I great? I am not sleeping. My body aches. I get out of bed and I walk like a duck because my feet hurt. I definitely have put on some weight, you know, and I'm not in a good mood. And they're like, yeah, I know, you're fine. That's just normal. You know, you're this age or whatever. And you're kind of like, that doesn't seem right. That's the blah phase, right? You're in here, there's no diagnosis. Your doctor's not really concerned. They might be like, well, you could lose a few pounds, but you know, you're fine. When you move over to the sort of bad end of the spectrum, this is when maybe you have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Maybe you have high blood pressure. Maybe you have other sort of what we consider degenerative conditions or conditions of aging, things that we start to think are normal, not normal. But even if you have, let's say, a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, a lot of people have been told or led to believe that that's it. This is a lifelong condition, and it's not. I mean, you can start sliding back down that spectrum, back to the blahs, and then hopefully from the blahs to the good. So you have to understand kind of where you are, and then, you know, what your tolerance level is for kind of the most common inflammatory foods, and sugar is probably the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, because it tastes good.
And it's easy, and it's in everything.
Right. Yeah.
Everywhere.
So how would you, I guess it maybe depends on the person, but would it be best to just go cold turkey and cutting out sugar, or just how would you figure out what is good for your body or what isn't?
So everyone's going to be different. And some people love to just dive in cold turkey. They're like, that's it. I'm just completely changing everything. And I'm just going in head first. I don't tend to find that works long-term for most people, because you kind of burn out. So I actually really like this idea of transitioning and transition foods. Mm-hmm. So my clients, we typically start with an understanding of what's going on, what we're trying to do. So we're going to try and really reduce those sugars. And again, I'm going to use the carbohydrate word. So we're going to call carbs sugars. So we're going to start to manage that. And a lot of people, that's really scary. And it's just like, but I like dessert and I want dessert. And I'm like, okay, well then let's have dessert, but let's learn how to do it in a way where it's not going to really impact your blood sugar, where you're going to have dessert, but you're going to be able to finish and not have cravings chasing you, because you didn't spike your blood sugar. You didn't cause your body to now crave and want more. So I like this concept of transition foods. So I help my clients enjoy desserts and maybe some treats even, while their body's readjusting to not having or needing such a high level of sugar. And within 2 weeks, like, so a lot of people, like, they'll keep sugar-free chocolate chips in their car or somewhere, and they'll have them to nibble on. And within 2 weeks, they'll be like, yeah, no, I don't eat those. I actually totally forgot I had those in my car. And it's just all of a sudden they realize, oh yeah, I'm not even thinking about that, because their body just kind of released that need for the sugar.
Okay. So what are some examples of some good sugars then that you transition with? Like you said, sugar-free.
So I don't transition with any sugars. I transition with alternative sweeteners.
Okay.
So stevia. Lactose is another one of my favorites. I do, erythritol is on my list. It was interesting because a study just came out that freaked everybody out about erythritol and it causing heart disease or strokes or something, but it's not a great study. So again, my clients, I'm like, this is okay. We can talk about the study, but I said, this is not concerning to me. In the study, they didn't distinguish between exogenous erythritol, so the erythritol you're eating, versus endogenous erythritol, which is your body making, because we do make it. Okay. So all they did was recognize that people with heart disease and stroke had high levels of erythritol. But even in the study, they said, we don't know if that's because they ate it or because their body produced it because of this condition. So it was kind of like, okay, well, thanks for freaking everybody out.
Right.
And the other thing too is even with those alternative sweeteners in that transition period, that would be probably the biggest time when you're using them, and you slowly sort of start to readjust your palate in general, and you just don't crave the sweets the way you used to. So it becomes kind of more of an occasional thing, and it's not something you're having all the time.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
And to just, I guess, kind of substitute the,
Yes.
the white sugars or whatever, and the carbohydrates. That's a hard one for me. I mean, I like bread, so I just,
Yeah. So do I.
yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is, I always say to people, the easiest thing in the world is to say, don't eat that. The hard part is going, well, what am I supposed to eat? And I think
Yeah.
that's when most people run into trouble. They're really good at taking things out of their diet and then having this huge void, which if you don't know what to put in there, you're just going to fall back into old patterns and old food. So
Right.
with my clients, of course, I'm not going to be like, don't eat, brownies. I'm going to be like, okay, if you want brownies, here's like 6 recipes for brownies that are not going to cause blood sugar spikes and cravings and are going to feel delicious and satisfying, and your whole family will like them. So I have just a huge recipe vault that I'm always filling that hole with. So for bread, for example, pizza. Who doesn't love pizza? We love pizza, but we also know, I get a bellyache when I eat pizza. And my husband and my daughter are both incredibly gluten intolerant. So this doesn't work. But we have pizza. So we make a high protein pizza. So we use chicken. And you make a pizza crust out of chicken and Parmesan cheese, some eggs and pizza spices. And it's so good. I like a thin crust pizza anyway. And but because of the chicken crust, that does not taste like chicken, by the way. It's so much more filling because you're getting such a high protein option as well.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a very interesting pizza. I do actually like chicken on my pizza. But
well, you could do that too.
Yeah, I've never thought of making it part of the crust.
And then there's a bread recipe that I just recently made. We don't do a lot of bread in the house because we all love it so much. And so even if it's sort of a healthier version, we're just going to gobble it down. And it's just, we don't really need it. But there's a recipe that I share where we use hearts of palm for the base of the bread. It comes out to be this kind of dense, really sort of homemade bread. So that's one. There's multiple different recipes that we use, but that's one of them. So yes, if there is somebody who's just dying for some toast, I'm like, I have some ideas. I have ideas.
That's awesome. So do you recommend sticking to raw foods? Is that, to base your around the vegetables and fruits, or what is your suggestion?
Again, it's if somebody comes to me and they're having a lot of gut issues, which a lot of people do, that tends to be a kind of common issue. I will encourage, I will encourage less, and then maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but in terms of, I was being very literal with the word raw. So I'm going to ask those people to be careful with raw vegetables and just, have the veggies, but cook them. But specifically, is it too specific?
No, that's exactly, what I was asking.
And sometimes I'll ask them to even slow down on the veggies. I know it sounds so funny as a nutritionist. Yeah, right. I'll be like, I think we need to go easy on the veggies and be very specific about what's happening. And then once their gut is feeling better, which they'll notice kind of right away, then we can slowly start reintroducing more. And then slowly they could try to add more raw veggies again. But yeah.
So is that more, do you start with like an elimination type diet to figure out issues?
Not so much to figure out issues. It's basically the complaints that I get are pretty the same. Like it'll be a lot of bloating, a lot of gas. There's specific things that they're eating that are causing the bloating. So it definitely points toward SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So there's a lot of fermentation happening. So in that sense, yes, we might look at a low FODMAP version of what we're doing for that person. So again, this is keeping those fermentable sugars, which mostly we've already taken that, for what we're doing, we've already kind of eliminated a lot of that stuff anyway. So that's why people tend to get better without actually specifically focusing on gut health, because it is just what happens. We are going to make your gut feel better in general, because we're taking out the most common inflammatory foods. And when I say that, again, don't feel like people are going to have nothing to eat. They have tons to eat. They love the food. It's delicious. There's it's better. It's probably more delicious and better than what they were trying to do, because they just didn't feel like they were supposed to eat certain things. I don't know that I'm supposed to eat chicken thighs with skin. And I'm like, oh yes, we will. And it's going to be delicious. So then they're all excited because they're having this very tasty food that's so satisfying. But the whole point of what I do with clients is to move you from, let's figure it out, let's get your body balanced, let's get everything in line, and then let's move over to this place where you actually understand what works and doesn't work for your body. And now let's diversify. Let's get back to the idea of eating whatever you want and knowing how to do that in a way that's going to work for your body. So yeah, you got to watch some metrics. You got to watch and see how you feel. You got to decide, is this an everyday thing? Is this a sometimes thing? And that'll be different for everyone.
Right. So what are other elements besides food that people need to pay attention to bring?
I do like exercise. I also like hunger. I like, in terms of food, again, it's going to come down to, I want you to pay attention to hunger cues. And I really want you to have a pretty one-to-one ratio, at least, of feasting and fasting. So I'm not asking you to fast. All I'm asking you to do is to, it's like a 12-hour overnight fast. And then you get 12 hours of food while you're awake. And a lot of people can't even do a 12-hour overnight fast. Like, to them, that's like, well, that's too much. So that's fine. So we start with, well, what can you do? Can you do 9 hours overnight? Great. Let's do 9 hours and 15 minutes. And then slowly get our way, work our way to that 12-hour overnight fast, which is that should be pretty common. And then there's some people who feel better if they even go to, they're like, well, now I can easily just push breakfast off until, whatever. So they might increase their fast to 14 hours a day. But I've always tell people, I want you to naturally fast. So no forcing a fast. If you wake up one day and you're super hungry, you need to eat breakfast. If you wake up another day and you're not super hungry, then you wait and you eat when you get hungry. And that might be 14 hours. Maybe it's 16 hours that day before you eat. But you have to follow your appetite. That's how I like people to approach fasting. I'm not like a big, we're fasting. Everybody who's doing this is fasting. No, you have to follow your appetite. And that's also going to depend on what you're doing for exercise and what you're doing, what are you doing all day? So also have to follow your hunger. And then with carbs, it's also going to make a difference depending on what you are doing for exercise. So you basically want to manage your carbs based on what you're doing. So if you're very incredibly active, then you're probably going to want to and can eat more carbohydrates than somebody like me who sits at my desk most of the day.
Okay.
So what did we say? What were you asking? So exercise, yes. But I always think of exercise as a phase 2 for a lot of people. I want you to get your body in balance so that your energy naturally comes up. And then when you start feeling antsy because you have energy to burn, that's when we start talking about, okay, exercise. But I don't like people to come in thinking it's this exercise is going to be the thing. It's not. Exercise is for a terrible example, the icing on the cake. That's the extra. Yeah.
Okay. And with that, like, just even movement, I mean, that could be important too.
So movement always. So I'm always going to say walk, but no high stress exercise until your body's ready, because we've got stress here we're dealing with already and we're trying to calm the body down. If you're going to add exercise, which is a healthy stressor, it's not healthy if you're not in a healthy place. So let's just move. And then once you're feeling better and getting, healthy, then we start adding that extra stressor. And fasting is also a stressor. So again, you don't want to be pushing a fast until you're in a place where your body can manage a healthy stressor so that it actually helps you get better, not worse.
And how would someone know when it's a healthy time to do the fasting or to add on more exercise?
So again, the fasting, it's going to happen naturally. You're going to wake up, you're going to feel amazing. You're not going to be ready to eat. You're going to be like, well, I'm just going to wait and I'll eat, I guess, in a couple hours when I get hungry. So you just follow your appetite.
Okay.
In terms of the exercise, it's just, you get to a point where you feel like you have to move. I had one client, she's hilarious. And she she said, she got on, we do weekly calls, and she got on the call and she said, I cleaned my entire garage yesterday. She goes, I've been trying to clean that garage for 4 years. And she said, yesterday, it was a Sunday. She said, I couldn't sit still. She goes, so I just went to the garage. And then the next thing I know, I cleaned the entire garage. And so that was for her, that was that moment where she realized, I got to do things. I can't sit around anymore.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's what I like to expend my energy. And so doing good things, just cleaning the garage or whatever, but even just daily movement, I think is important.
And again, I'm a huge pusher of weights, resistance exercise and weightlifting, especially for women. It's just, muscle is our organ of longevity. The more there are study after study after study that show the more muscle that we have and retain as we age, the longer and healthier you live. And it's just so important. And we just slowly but surely, the older we get, the more sedentary we become. And we just lose muscle mass. So lots of protein and lots of resistant exercise, just to at least hang on to the muscle mass we have, but ideally increase that muscle mass if we can.
Yeah, if you don't use it, you lose it, right?
And it's amazing. I saw a study recently. It was or I can't remember where I saw this study, conversation, I don't remember, but it was that the biggest thing that causes older adults to decline is some sort of an injury or something that knocks them off their normal, regular schedule and activity. And then even if they have a full recovery, they never get back to their regular activity. And then they just steadily decline. It was so interesting. And I thought, oh man. Because even I definitely feel that now. It's so much easier sometimes for me to just be like, I think it's better for me if I just stay in bed longer today instead of going to the gym. I'm like, I could see how that could take over.
Yeah, I think putting it in a routine of, listening to your body, but also putting it in a routine for you. So I've heard someone that they'd be like, when it was hard for me, I would set my clothes out that I was going to use for exercise so that I knew they were there. I didn't even have to think about what I was going to wear. So before they went to bed, they put those clothes out, and then they didn't have that excuse of, I don't even know what to put on. Right. And then it kind of motivated them to get up and just move.
So one of the things you mentioned about my bio is I'm also a life coach. So here's the thing that's so interesting. And this is something that I do with my clients too, is this future planning. So we can actually make decisions for the future, for our future self, even if it's just for our future self of tomorrow. We can do that. And if we do that, then we're using our new modern thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, to make those decisions. Those are going to be much better decisions than we are going to make ever in the moment. In the moment, we're using our primitive brain, and our primitive brain is all about what I want right now. It does not care at all about what our future plans are or what our big goals are. It's now, I don't care. So by putting her clothes out, she made a decision using her prefrontal cortex. She said, for my future self, I'm putting my clothes out for tomorrow, so I don't have to think about it. I'm going to get up. They're going to be right there. Done. So another thing people can do is try to plan the entire day ahead. Think about before you go to bed, well, what am I going to eat tomorrow? Figure it out, write it down. And then guess what? You will probably make much better food decisions tomorrow, because if you honor those decisions that you've made for your future self, you're going to eat really well. You're not going to be standing in front of M&Ms and be like, God, I'm kind of hungry because I didn't eat anything. I should eat those M&Ms. Yeah. You're going to be like, oh yeah, no, I have this amazing lunch planned, or whatever it is. So yeah.
I think that's important, especially as moms with children. It's the afternoon comes and you're like, oh, what are we having for dinner? So it makes it really hard. And then you just get a quick, easy, something that's maybe junk or whatever. But so the pre-plan.
And we all do it.
Yeah. And
I do it too.
Yeah. I've been up and down, and I get my kids involved with planning too, because they help cook. And I think that's important to help them learn to decide ahead of time what you're going to be preparing and things. But I also like to just do, a bunch of carrots and get them ready. And, peeled and in the fridge so that that's a quick snack that I don't have to think about, and instead of going for a chip, which shouldn't be in the house anyway, but
So that's one of the things I harp on constantly is food inventory. So I want to be able to open the refrigerator and I want to be like, oh, okay. Oh, I have leftover hamburgers. Oh, I have tri-tip all cut up. Oh, I have some grilled chicken here. Oh, we have cut up. I always have a huge salad made and ready in the fridge. I probably have to make it every 3 days. But that's ready to go. So whatever protein I have in there, I can just be like, oh, perfect. I'm going to have my salad and I'm going to throw some tri-tip on there. I'm going to throw some chicken on there, whatever it is. So we always usually have hamburgers cooked and ready. We have chicken sausages cooked and ready. We usually do I don't know what part of the country you're in, but in California, tri-tip is big. It's just kind of like a roast beef, but you grill it and then you slice it thin. And so that's in there and ready to go. But just knowing, it's just so calming to open the refrigerator and know, oh, okay. And so I'm not a good food prepper. Like I don't like to plan specific meals. I just want to know what my options are and be like, oh, I've got it all right here. Hard-boiled eggs are in there. It's all ready to go. Cooked. We'll have a huge thing of cooked broccoli, a huge thing of cooked green beans. It's all ready.
Yeah, it makes it easier to throw something together that's nutritious.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in Texas, so there's a lot of meat.
So you guys are brisket. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's, all kinds of stuff. But so what is another point? So we have exercise and our foods. Is there anything else that people need to pay attention to for getting back their energy or helping them,
Well, sleep, of course. That's gigantic. That's always the elephant in the room is the sleep.
Right.
And that's never the first thing people talk about. Never. It's always something that comes up later. I remember I had this one client, this one woman in my group, and she finally said, I can't believe how well I'm sleeping. She said, I'm sleeping. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's great. And she's like, no, you don't understand. I haven't slept in 30 years. She said, I've been an insomniac for over 30 years. I've seen every doctor. I've tried every medication. Nothing has worked. And she said, but now I'm sleeping. And again, we got to regulate that blood sugar. We got to calm the inflammation and get your body back into balance. And then all of a sudden the sleep, actually, it's something, and we work on that too. In my program, there's a whole section on sleep. So, sleep hygiene, what to do in the house to make it, better for sleeping, what you should do during the day to get your body ready. So it's making the right hormones at the right time, all that stuff. But sleep is huge. I mean, there's again, so many studies showing how rapidly we decline without proper sleep. I think I know this, I can't think of any studies specifically, but just those studies that show, I think 24 hours, if there's 24 hours where your sleep is interrupted, and I think it's like if you stay awake, do an overnighter or whatever, you actually become insulin resistant that fast.
Wow.
I know, it was crazy fast. So yeah, it was just very disturbing. But
I'll tell my college girls not to do overnighters. I'll stay awake all night.
Yeah, it's so incredibly bad for your body. And then, of course, there's the whole mental confusion that goes along with all of that. It's just a mess. But yeah, so sleep is definitely huge, and you need to prioritize what that's going to look like for you, how you're going to make that happen. So bedtime routine, what is that going to look like? So, it's very interesting, but the idea of having an awake time is almost more important than having a bedtime, but having that awake time every day. I get up at 6 a.m., whatever, even Saturdays and Sundays, that actually will help your body regulate the proper sleep time. You know what time you're going to be going to bed.
Okay.
And the other thing too, people will just be like, I know I have to go to bed earlier. I normally go to bed at midnight, but I'm going to go to bed at 10. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't work. You're going to go to bed and you're going to lay there because your body is not ready. It's used to going to bed at midnight. So you kind of have to work your way backwards very slowly in tiny chunks. And I am a nutritionist, so for sleep, I tend to recommend certain supplements. So I always recommend magnesium at night. If somebody's very stressed out and they just have a spinning brain, I'm going to throw L-theanine in there. And there certainly a little bit of melatonin. So you can make your own little sleep cocktail, but depending on the person. I don't push a lot of supplements, but if clients are asking me for something specific, that would be one area where there's certain things that I do say, yeah, this could help. And I do get a lot of feedback on that, and people are thrilled and pleased. It tends to work.
Yeah, sometimes your brain just wants to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to stop. So
Yeah.
excellent. So is there a certain time? It seems like there's better time for sleep, not going to bed at midnight and getting up at 10 or, or whatever, but
Yes. The research that I have done indicates that between 10 and 1, I think, might be 10 and 2, but those are sort of the key hours at night. So if you can be asleep during that window, that tends to be the best time for your body for rest and recovery.
okay.
So that's why a lot of people are always pushing that 10 o'clock bedtime. Of course, if you go to bed earlier than that, but if you're asleep during that window, that's really supposedly this time that's supposed to be the best. Again, I'm not a sleep expert. I've read many, many books and that seems to be a common theme.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that's probably not start getting ready to bed at 10, but being asleep.
Try to be in bed, maybe
Yeah.
asleep by 10:30, but yes,
Yeah.
you want to be asleep between in that window somewhere. So maybe if you're asleep by 11, I don't know, somewhere in there. I hate putting like hard edges on anything, but
Yeah. And life needs to be flexible a little bit with things going on, but but to have that routine, I think would help.
Yeah.
So
bedtime routine is actually so amazing because your body gets it. Again, it wants feedback. It wants you to tell it what to do. And so that bedtime routine, your body's like, oh, okay, I get it. I know what we're doing. Yes. So it's good. Bring that little 3-year-old along. They really do want to help.
yeah. And I love that you had said earlier about, this can help any age person.
Yes.
And not to wait until you see issues, probably, but to implement these things into your life now.
It's so funny because my coaching program, I tend to kind of talk towards sort of people 40 and older, or it used to be 50 and older, and it's slowly moved down to 40 and older. But now it's really shifted. I mean, I have women in my program in their late 20s and in their 30s. So now it's just, I basically am just like any age. Doesn't matter. If you want to feel better, it doesn't matter how old you are. And you can be young and want to feel better, but you can also be older and want to feel better, and you can feel better.
Yeah, this is just all so interesting to me, and it's so important. I mean, our health, you can't function without good health. I mean, you need it or function optimally, I guess. And so for me, LivGreater, I mean, a lot of that is health and how we need to implement those things.
So now that you said that, I would say the one thing I would add, and one of the reasons that I mentioned that I am a life coach, is because it is your body, but it's also your brain. So there's so much going on in your head that is actually, what you're thinking is creating the results in your life. So if you're doing all of the things and your brain is not kind of, on the same track, you're holding yourself back. So it's just so important to get in there and do those things, the physical, tangible things, but then also, make sure you're managing your brain and you know what's going on there so that you can, think the thoughts that you want and feel the way that you want and then create the result that you want. It's amazing. It's so interesting. And that's probably my favorite part.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's just like that cognitive thinking, like you were talking about, that frontal lobe of progressive thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
But we have 60,000 plus thoughts in a day. We don't even realize what we're thinking. And then we're acting or reacting based on those thoughts. And so if you don't have awareness around what it is you're thinking, you really don't have a lot of control over what you're creating and what you're doing. So that's what life coaching is all about. It's about bringing you that awareness so that you start to be able to stop and think, God, I'm so angry. And then you can stop and be like, wait, why am I angry? And then you can kind of backtrack to what was I just thinking that just made me feel so angry? and then go, was that actually real? Is that real? Is that something I'm making up? It's really fun. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And when you backtrack to those feelings, like, was that really what I was feeling? Like sometimes
Right.
it's an anger, but it's really because you're having anxiety about, fear or something,
Right.
or,
Right. What's the real feeling? Like that's the hardest the thing for people to tap into is I always ask somebody, so what are you feeling when you're thinking that? And they're just like blank. And I have a list that I send everybody. I'm like, here's 2 pages of feelings. You can go through this and maybe it'll jog your memory. But it's like we're not in touch at all with what a lot of those feelings are. Like we'll have the basics. I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm lonely, I'm angry, the basics. And even then people get tongue-tied. They're like, I don't know. Like, okay. It's so interesting.
your gut and your brain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that the gut is like your second brain or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So if your
So,
gut's not healthy, then I mean, that affects your body just like your brain.
right. So again, so many people will think, well, I don't have gut issues, but they have anxiety, they are depressed, they have headaches, they have migraines, lots of neurological stuff going on that is related to their gut. It's so interesting to watch people's anxiety. That's a big one. So to watch people's stress level start to just drop is once they start getting their gut in order and everything starts getting back into balance. And they'll think it mostly happens because what you'll see is, well, this thing that always stresses me out and just pushes me right over the edge. Now you're kind of sitting there and you're looking at it and you're like, that used to drive me crazy. Whatever. It's not really driving me crazy anymore, but you recognize that that's the thing that used to drive you crazy. You just become so much more, your level of stress, it just calms down. My daughter, the one that has a super intolerance to gluten, and I literally has not eaten gluten on purpose since she was 17. She's just turning 30.
Wow.
But she's really had to dial in her diet, and she knows as soon as she sort of is a little loosey goosey with her diet, her anxiety goes sky high, and she recognizes it. At this point, she can see it. And again, that's a choice she gets to make. She's like, yeah, I know I ate blah, 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 blah. And now I'm like totally wrong. And she's like, but it's, whatever. I mean, it was delicious. She will recognize it.
Yeah, I
So,
have a couple daughters that kind of are lactose intolerant, but they're like, but the ice cream's worth it.
yes.
Like, okay. I mean, because there are other options for ice cream that they
Yeah.
do, but sometimes they just go for the full dairy, and
Yes.
they're like,
And later in life, they may get to a point where they're like, it's not worth it. But
yeah.
right now it is. And that's great. Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. But that's the beauty is you get to decide for yourself, what's worth it, what's not worth it. And that's my goal, is to get everybody to that point where they can understand and then make those decisions. And I have found in my program, so we do weekly calls as a group, and it's so interesting to watch people kind of start, not sort of unintentionally reintroducing things that they had stopped eating, and then we're having some major success in terms of body composition, health, anxiety, stress, all of it. And then they'll tell me about, well, I ate this and I ate that and everything was fine and it doesn't really seem to be a problem for me. And then all of a sudden they start listing what's going on. Well, I'm not losing weight anymore, and my anxiety's up, and they just start talking. And in the story, I'm pulling these things out, and then I was able to go, so you ate this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and you were thinking that it wasn't a problem, but what you've just said to me is these are the things you're currently experiencing. And and for them to be able to go, I didn't see it. That's one of the beauties of the call, is because sometimes you do need another pair of eyes to hear the story and see. And they just were like, I didn't see it. And here they thought adding the pizza back in and the sandwiches and all these things was fine. And it didn't matter for them. They can do it. And when they were like, oh my God, I can't do it. And I'm like, yeah, no, at least not right now. Your body's not ready. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that is interesting. That you don't even realize
I know.
sometimes.
And then 4 months later, you realize you just put back 25 pounds. You're like, oh, I just gained 25 pounds, but I don't know why, because I'm good. I don't have an intolerance to this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe you did. or maybe you do, but there wasn't a, if you're doing it by yourself, you don't have somebody there to help you catch it. And so you don't see it. And so you slide back into old patterns.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
is it like people seem to gain more weight, or it's easier to gain weight as they get older? Is that just because metabolisms is slowing down, or I guess it just depends on the person?
It depends on the person. And this person was they were on a weight loss journey of 100 pounds. So
Wow.
so they had lost 60 pounds and they had some more to go, or they felt like they had more to go.
Mm-hmm.
But then they were, they just mentally sort of started shifting back into old patterns and thinking that it was okay, and that they discovered for themselves that they really don't have an intolerance to gluten, and carbohydrates actually don't impact them in a bad way. But after we kind of investigated a little bit and really looked at some of the metrics that help them know if their body's going in a good direction or a bad direction, they were able to see, oh, I'm going in the wrong direction. But if you don't have somebody there, often if there's not somebody there to help you, that's when you do all of a sudden 3 months later, 6 months later, look and go, I just gained all my weight back, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like, well, the signs were there. You just didn't know what to look for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, this has been so fascinating and great. I appreciate all that you shared. This is excellent. Where can people find you to maybe be a part of your program or get in touch with you?
So my website is called thesimplicityoFwellness.com. So you can go there and basically find everything. My coaching program is called Hangry to Healthy. And there is a button right at the top on my website that says Hangry to Healthy. You can also click for a free, I think it's a free 40-minute consult to talk about what's going on, and if you'd be a good candidate for the Hangry to Healthy program. And it's a good 40-minute call, so you do leave with tips and ideas and some action steps regardless of whether or not you do or want to join the program or not. So it's a worthwhile 40 minutes. But yeah, I think you can find mostly everything about me there. I'm on Instagram as the same, The Simplicity of Wellness. Facebook, The Simplicity of Wellness. I try to make it pretty standard.
That's good. And then you had a discount for the listeners.
Yeah. So the Hangry to Healthy program is lifetime access. So once you are in, you are in. And that is because as you learn to connect with your body, you're going to go through phases. And I want everybody to, I'm creating a structure for people to start out with, but that is not something that people should be following forever. You have to create your own structure or you just won't stick. Mm-hmm. We all need that autonomy to be able to make our own choices. So I start with some structure so you learn tools. And then you are able to take that information and adapt it to you specifically and, start moving into your own plan. But I always want to make sure people can bounce back in whenever they need to, if they want, to check in, or they want some advice, or they want some guidance. So that's why the program is, lifetime access, as long as the program exists, so that people can come in. Some people come every week to the calls, and other people, come for the first 12 weeks and then they kind of bounce back in and out. It just depends on the person. But that's why I do a lifetime access. But for anybody who's listening to the podcast, there is a 10% off coupon for the lifetime access. So you can join the program for that 10% off. And I think I've decided on LivGreater as the coupon code, all one word.
That's perfect. So, and we'll leave all those links in the show notes as well.